What happens when everyone who laughed at you ends up standing in line for a job? He didn't seek revenge. He built schools instead, and what he said in that interview left them speechless. By the time James Lowry turned 22, he'd already had enough of the jokes. You know the kind. Not the funny ones, but the kind people toss at you when they're too scared to chase something themselves. Bro, you're not cut out for the real world. An app for farmers? Come on, man. That's hilarious. Good luck with that. Yeah, hilarious. Especially when it's coming from the same people who used to borrow his notes in econ and now wore keycards like trophies at their entry-level finance jobs. His college buddies, childhood friends, even his own girlfriend, Kelsey. Sweet, supportive, always smiling Kelsey. At least until he saw that message on her screen. At least he's got dreams, right? Even if they're dumb as hell. She left a week later. Said she needed someone more grounded. Translation, someone already collecting a salary. Left behind were an empty fridge, a bed he rarely used, and a second-hand laptop with a cracked trackpad, bought on credit, paid in gas station ramen. But here's the thing. James had a plan. Not a flashy one, not the kind that made Ivy League recruiters pull out gold pens, just a sharp, stubborn idea that clung to his ribs and refused to let go. A platform, built with AI, for the backbone of the country, small-time farmers who couldn't afford crop analysts or market advisors. It would forecast yield, flag market spikes, track weather trends, and tell farmers when to sell, when to store, and when to walk away. All in plain English. All at a price that didn't take food off the table. It wasn't cute. It wasn't sexy. It was necessary. Because James had watched his dad lose their family land after a brutal season. Corn rotted in the silos. Loans defaulted. And nobody offered a damn thing except paperwork and a handshake. James had sworn that wouldn't happen to the next man. But try pitching that vision with $73 in your bank account and no Stanford hoodie in sight. No investors called back. No incubators responded, not even a rejection letter, just silence. The kind of silence that gets under your skin and starts whispering in the dark, maybe they're right. Still, while the boys were out clubbing in downtown Nashville, James was writing code in a basement that smelled like mildew and ambition. While his friends posted LinkedIn updates with titles they barely understood, James was selling his only pair of collectible sneakers, the ones his brother gave him in high school, just to afford one more month of cloud access. No mattress, just a yoga mat and an app that barely functioned. But it was his, built with coffee spoons, tutorials, and enough duct tape to make a NASA engineer sweat. They called him crazy. They weren't wrong, but James knew what they didn't. He wasn't chasing dreams, he was building a weapon, quietly, patiently, while they laughed. And they did laugh. Every birthday party, every group chat, every awkward reunion at the same bar back home. James, the farmer whisperer, how's the barnyard, bro? Let us know when you IPO your Scarecrow startup. He laughed too, because what else do you do when you're hungry, tired, and one server crash away from losing everything? You laugh, and then you go home, fix the bug, and keep going. Because somewhere in Iowa or Nebraska or Kentucky, there was a farmer who didn't care about VCs or brunch menus, a farmer who just needed one good year to survive. James was going to give it to him. 2 years. That's how long James Lowry had been grinding without a break, without an office, and without so much as a folding chair with his name on it. His world was a rotating carousel of public libraries, borrowed Wi-Fi, and off-brand instant noodles that came in styrofoam cups with suspicious flavor packets. Some days he worked in silence, the kind you only get in the back corner of a university library where the outlets barely function. Other days, he was shoulder to shoulder with college kids who thought he was just some oddball adult trying to relive his glory days. He wasn't. He was feeding lines of code into a shaky AI model and manually scraping data from dusty agriculture forums, PDFs written in 2006, and Google Translate versions of Chinese commodity indexes. No team, no budget, no mercy. And then it happened. A message popped up late one night. He was halfway through debugging a line that had crashed his app for the 5th time in 3 hours. His eyes burned. His stomach growled. Hey, your bot told me to sell my corn a week early. Saved me $6 grand. This thing for real. It was from a farmer in Iowa. Real guy, real crops, real money. $6,000. One smart decision. Triggered by James's rickety little algorithm and a prayer, James didn't respond right away. He just sat there, blinking at the screen, letting it sink in. Then he smiled, not wide, not cocky, but the kind of slow grin that builds from deep inside when you realize you were right all along. That one message opened the floodgates. The next few weeks, more messages trickled in. Then they came faster. Dozens, then hundreds. Farmers from Georgia to Kansas were emailing him with screenshots, questions, praise, and more importantly, trust. They weren't suits. They weren't Silicon Valley. They were the people this country forgets until a grocery shelf goes empty. And they were paying attention now. James renamed the platform AgriSite, gave it a real landing page, and then, in a move most founders would call suicide, he made it free. Not because he was naive, because he understood scale, reach, timing. You can't sell value to people who don't know you exist. So he gave them the gift first. Let the value speak louder than a price tag. But here's the twist. Even then, nobody in his life took it seriously. Old friends from school? Still chuckling. Wait. You still playing Farmer App CEO? Bro, when you hit your first billion, don't forget us. You got stock options and cow pies now? They laughed in sports bars, ordered overpriced burgers, talked about promotions and parking spots. Meanwhile, James was writing code in the back of a rideshare, the screen of his beat-up laptop bouncing with every pothole. He picked up late-night delivery shifts to scrape together enough for server time and domain renewals. No marketing team, no UX designer, just grit. He'd code until 3 a.m., then close his laptop with shaking hands, his brain fried, and his fingers cold, thinking, one day, these guys are going to be refreshing my company's careers page. They didn't see it, didn't want to see it. But James, he knew what they didn't. You don't have to be in a boardroom to start a revolution. Sometimes, revolutions begin in the last row of a library between a cold sandwich and a broken socket. And AgriSite was about to stop being a side project and start becoming a movement. The email subject line said it all. New user registered, TX 3,024 acres. James stared at the screen like it had just punched him in the gut in the best possible way. 3,000 acres in Texas. That wasn't a hobby garden or a guy planting cucumbers behind his garage. That was a full-scale, high-stakes operation. And the farmer had chosen AgriSite, his platform, his code, his idea. James almost cried, and not in a poetic, Hollywood kind of way. He literally blinked back tears in a public library with cracked vinyl chairs and a busted vending machine. Because for the first time, someone big believed in what he had built. Not just theory, not charity, trust. A week later, a popular agriculture blog ran a feature titled, "The App Saving Farmers More Than Their Crops." James read it 10 times, out loud, then silently. Then to the library janitor, who gave him a thumbs up without really understanding why. A month after that, Forbes came knocking. The headline, "From Dirt to Data, the 26-year-old disrupting ag tech with a laptop and a mission." And just like that, the invisible man became front-page news. The inbox exploded. Investors, journalists, recruiters, accelerator programs that had ghosted him 2 years ago were suddenly thrilled to reconnect. First came local players tossing 5-figure offers like confetti. Then Sequoia Capital called. James had to take a walk around the block, twice, before answering. It wasn't nerves, it was gravity. When the big dogs start circling, the whole game changes. By the time the seed round closed, AgriSite had secured $15 million in funding. Not bad for a kid with a coffee-stained hoodie and a code base built on midnight prayers. But here's where it gets real juicy. Suddenly, the same bros who mocked his vision, the ones who ordered extra fries with their sarcasm, started crawling out of the woodwork. At first, it was subtle. "Yo, James, saw that Forbes article. Proud of you, man. Always knew you had that hustle in you. Still remember those late nights back in the dorms. Hey, can we catch up sometime?" Then came the resumes. Some slid into his LinkedIn with freshly polished job titles and forced humility. Others arrived through mutual contacts, vague intros about synergies and exploring new opportunities. These were the same guys who once laughed at his food stamps, who told him to get real, who said no one cared about farm tech unless it was being pitched by someone with a trust fund and a yacht. Now, "Hey brother, let's grab coffee. Got a few ideas for how I could contribute to your team. My fiance says I'd be a perfect cultural fit at AgriSite. Let's chat?" James didn't respond. Not right away. He just sat there, quietly scrolling through messages filled with shallow compliments and strategic flattery, wondering how many of them even remembered what they said to him back then. Because here's the thing about people like James Lowry: they don't forget, they forgive, they grow, but they remember exactly who laughed, and who showed up when it was no longer funny. James didn't send his R team to do it. He didn't push it off to recruiters. He did it himself. Every resume from an old friend got the same response: "Let's talk, in person." Not because he needed help, but because he needed to look them in the eye. First through the door was Zach Taylor, the college golden boy, former football captain, 6'2", jawline you could slice bread with, and the same guy who once called James techno-dork, loud enough for the whole frat house to hear. Now, pressed shirt, nervous smile, resume in hand. "Dude," Zach grinned, a little too wide. "What you built here. Man, it's insane. Respect. Seriously. I'd love to be part of the team." James leaned back in the chair. No anger, no smirk. Just that calm, razor-sharp clarity he'd earned the hard way. "The same team," he said slowly, "that you laughed at during freshman year. I remember. Your words. Tech guys don't win in the real world. They just update it." Zach froze. His bravado cracked like glass under pressure. "Yeah, that was stupid. I was stupid. People change, right?" James didn't blink. "Some people do." He reached for the next resume. Enter Travis King. Finance major turned beer pong legend. Infamous for that one party where he made James bet on a code challenge, lost, and still posted the picture online with the caption, "Meet Steve Jobless, coming soon to a garage near you." Now, suit jacket 2 sizes too tight, designer coffee in one hand, white envelope in the other. "James, this place is... wow. I mean, AgriSite's everywhere. I've got a lot of ideas. Growth strategy, partnerships. I can really..." James raised a hand. "Let me stop you there." His voice was steady, like a blade sliding out of its sheath. "I remember what you said about me. You told a whole room I had a face built for failure. Maybe you were right." Then he leaned forward, the kind of pause that makes people listen. "But this face is now valued at $100 million. Travis opened his mouth, closed it again. James didn't flinch. He just stood up, extended his hand with professional ease, and said, "Thank you for coming in. We'll be in touch." No need to yell, no need to gloat. Power doesn't scream. It signs paychecks. Outside the glass walls of AgriSite HQ, the world kept spinning. Inside, James was rewriting the definition of who gets to win and who gets left watching from the sidelines. He didn't want revenge. He wanted clarity. And in these interviews, he got it. Not everyone who came knocking was turned away. Some of them, just a few, walked through the doors not with suits, not with pitch decks, but with truth in their eyes. It was easy to spot the difference. The ones chasing money always looked past James when they talked. The ones who came for validation, for ego repair, they spoke with salesmanship, not sincerity. But the few who came with regret and reflection, they didn't try to be clever. They came to own their past. That's why James didn't hesitate when Chris Delaney walked into the room. No forced grin, no flash. Just jeans, a wrinkled button-down, and a worn look that said, "I've been thinking about this for a long time." Chris had been one of the early mockers. Not the loudest, not the cruelest, but the kind who went with the flow, let the others laugh, and never once pushed back. He was the guy at the table who never said the punchline, but always smirked when someone else did. The kind of silence that cuts just as deep. James remembered it all. But what stood in front of him now wasn't the same man. This wasn't a kid looking to climb a ladder someone else built. This was someone who'd fallen and learned what the ground tastes like. Chris didn't waste time. "I'm not here for a title," he said. "I'm not here for a salary bump or a corner office. Honestly, I'm not even sure I'm the right fit for this place anymore." He took a breath, eyes steady. "But I needed to tell you, you were right, and I was wrong. You believed in something real. I laughed at it. Not because it was stupid, but because I didn't have the guts to believe in anything myself. And if there's ever a place in this company, even sweeping floors, I'd be honored. But if not, that's okay too. I just had to say I'm proud of you. Truly. James sat there, hands folded, letting the silence carry weight. There was no rehearsed rhythm in Chris's voice, no practiced humility. This was a man who had wrestled with his pride and lost willingly. James stood up, extended his hand. I don't hire from guilt, he said, but I do hire people who grow. Chris shook his hand with both of his. That handshake didn't secure a job. It secured respect. And in this world, respect is the rarest currency of all. Contrast that with the likes of Zach and Travis, who still didn't get it. They came dressed to impress, with buzzwords in their pockets and padded resumes that looked more like sales brochures than stories of experience. Their handshakes were polished, their compliments mechanical, and their eyes scanned the office like real estate agents checking for square footage. Zach, the former college football captain, still walked like the world owed him applause. He cracked a joke about the good old days and tossed out phrases like synergy and thought leadership, as if James would forget he once called him a future customer support rep at best. Travis, as always, brought his fake charm wrapped in a premium suit jacket and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The same Travis who once posted that photo of James at a dorm party with the caption, "This guy thinks he's building the next Apple, LOL." Now, he was holding a resume and a cup of coffee like a peace offering. "You've done something incredible here," Travis said smoothly. "I think with my background, I could be an asset to your leadership team." James didn't blink. "You once told me I had a face built for failure." "Maybe you were right, but that same face is now on the cover of Fast Company and signed off on a $15 million round last quarter." The silence between them cracked louder than any shout. Travis chuckled awkwardly. "Come on, man. That was college. We were just messing around." "No, Travis," James said, voice steady. "You were playing games. I was building my future." He stood. "Thanks for stopping by. We'll let you know." No raised voice, no dramatic exit, just a door, gently but firmly closed. James didn't turn them down out of revenge. He didn't need that. He turned them down because leadership has no room for pretense, and his company, the one built on grit, not glamour, was sacred ground. People like Travis and Zach, they didn't care about the mission. They cared about momentum, and they only ran toward it once the cameras were rolling. But Chris walked in when it was quiet. Chris walked in with nothing to gain and everything to admit. That takes courage, and that's what James was building. Not just a company, but a culture. One where the mission wasn't just a tagline, it was lived, defended, and earned. You see, the thing no one tells you about success is this. It attracts two kinds of people. Those who believe in what you're doing, and those who just want a seat at the table after the food's been served. James had learned to spot the difference, and more importantly, he had the strength to choose. 800,000 users. That's where AgriSite stands today, and James? He's no longer just a founder. He's one of the youngest billionaires in ag tech. Quiet, focused, relentless. No champagne, no ego. He builds schools for farm kids, funds grants for underdogs, hires students no one else believes in, because he remembers what it felt like to be dismissed, what it meant to be alone with a dream and a deadline. And his old friends? They're watching his interviews on YouTube, hearing that same line again and again. They laughed. Now they're in line, and I wish them luck. It's not revenge, it's balance. It's what happens when belief outlasts noise. And this is just the beginning.